Good evening. At this time, I'll call the regular meeting of the Board of Adjustments and Appeals to order. If you would please rise as we pledge allegiance to the flag. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. At this time, may I have a roll call, please?
Chairman Taylor?
Here.
Vice Chairman Shahab?
Here.
Member Smith Rodriguez?
Here.
Member Johnson?
Here.
Alternate Member Kilpatrick?
Here. Okay, we have a full board tonight, of 5, and that's great, so we do have a quorum. First on the agenda is approval of the minutes, and that goes back to February 27th. Did anyone note any corrections or changes that have been made to the minutes? Not seeing any. May I have a motion, please?
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes of May 20.
I'll second that.
Okay.
All right, we have a motion, we have a second. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? No, then it carries. Thank you. All right. Okay, this time I have my little speech to make. Let me slide things around here. All persons who anticipate speaking on any public hearing item must fill out an oath card to be heard on that agenda item and sign the oath contained on the card. These cards are located at a table over near the entrance to the council chamber or may be obtained from the recording secretary. This meeting will be conducted in accordance with procedures adopted in Resolution number 24-1997. Those speaking in favor of a request will be heard first. Those that oppose will be heard second. And those who wish to make a public comment on the item will speak third. The applicant may make a brief rebuttal if necessary. A representative from either side, for or against, may cross-examine a witness. Anyone who speaks is considered a witness. If you have photographs, sketches, or documents that you desire for the commission to consider, they must be submitted into evidence and will be retained by the city. If you have some of those extras now, you may submit them to the recording secretary. Next up is, have the item for up tonight been properly advertised, staff?
Yes, it has.
Very good. Do we have any members that have visited or spoken to the members of the public regarding the item that will be reviewed tonight?
No.
All right, I see no comments other than we know where the site is, we drive by it, but no one has spoke with anybody. Very well. All right, we have no consent agenda, we have no old business, so we will move on to the first item up for tonight. And that, well, I'll find it eventually. Staff, if you'll go ahead and lead us into it, please.
Okay. So it's on page 8 of your packet. You'll find the cover page in your agenda for variance number 2-2019 is the second case for this year. And this is for a property with a parcel ID of 22-350303H.01. And this is a vacant piece of property in our downtown. The variance request to you was submitted by Ms. Kimberly Rosanka, who is working on behalf of the owner of the property. They were requesting 2 ground signs for the property. And so they're asking for variances to 2 separate sections of the code as a result. One to section 32-53, ground-mounted monument or pole sign, and to section 32-56 of the code, titled General Configurations. This will allow 2 ground signs and also both signs to exceed the maximum height of 10 feet in this area. On page 10 of your packet begins the staff's report. But before I go into the report, I'm going to give you some general idea of where this is located. So I'm going to point to a map in your packet on page. Apologize, my computer died on me, so now I have to resort to paper. On page 25 of your packet, you will see a map That is the downtown mixed-use zoning district. There is a special separate called Smart Code that regulates all development, including signage, for this area. And this encompasses our community redevelopment area, or CRA. And in this particular special zoning district, this downtown mixed-use zoning district, there are 5 sub-districts. There is the Civic Waterfront sub-district, there's the Uptown sub-district, a Downtown sub-district, a Midtown sub-district. We also have what's called a Historic Residential separate zoning district as well. This particular property is located in the Downtown sub-district. So when I refer to Downtown sub-district, that's what I'm talking about. It's a sub-district of the overall zoning district called Downtown Mixed Use. In these separate sub-districts, you'll see there are a little bit of differences in the development standards and zoning requirements. Apologize, I'm going to refer you to another map. It's the last page of your packet, I believe, page 39. And this is our zoning map. And so I tried to give you a little, an idea as to where this property is located. So it has 3 sides or 3 frontages on public right-of-way, improved public right-of-way, on Garden Street, Indian River Avenue, and Orange Street. So I want to begin by kind of orientate you to this property first before I go into the staff report. Again, it's in the downtown sub-district of the overall downtown DMU zoning district. And again, you can see that's just south of the park, which is encompassed by the blue area. That's the Sandpoint Park. That is the Civic Waterfront sub-district. And then the orange in the top left of the image on page 39 is the Uptown sub-district. I'll refer to these as I go through my staff report. Before I start, do you have any questions? Okay.
I don't see it.
Okay, so going back to page 10 of your packet, I'll start with the staff report. Again, this variance request is to 2 sections of the code, 32-53 and 32-56, related to the number of ground signs and the height of ground signs. There are renderings that were provided to you at the end of your packet that were provided by the applicant to illustrate what the signs will look like. That's on page 40, starting on page 40 of your packet. So you'll see a very large ground sign that is illustrated as sign A, that's 25 feet high with a solid base. And then there's another one, the same sign, but it doesn't have a solid base. It looks like a pole sign. And then just behind that, there is the 15-foot sign, sign B, which again has a solid base, and there's another one just behind that that is the same sign, but with not a solid base, but with poles. So that's what I'm referring to when I talk about sign A, sign B. So the property is located again on the south side of Garden Street, State Road 405, west of Indian River Avenue and north of Orange Street, east of the Burger King, which is located at 11 South Washington Avenue. The comprehensive plan future land use designation is downtown mixed use, and the zoning district on this property is downtown mixed use, and again, the sub-district is downtown. The surrounding zoning districts and sub-districts are again on the south, east, and west of this property, all downtown mixed use, but have a sub-district of downtown. North of this property, which is Sandpoint Park, also has a downtown mixed-use zoning, but it has a different sub-district, and that's called Civic Waterfront Sub-District. I'm on page 11 of the packet right now. Lot characteristics. The property is just over an acre, is rectangular in shape, and with 3 street frontages. The property is currently vacant. Proposed commercial use of the property is consistent with the downtown mixed-use zoning district, so we don't have an issue here with the use. I'll briefly describe the criteria that you should consider as part of each variance request. And again, these are 2 separate variance requests, one for the number of signs and then another one for the height of both of those signs. Are there special conditions and circumstances which exist that are peculiar to the property and land, structure, or building involved which are not applicable to other lands in this area. Special conditions and circumstances do not result from the actions of the applicant. Granting the variance requested will not confer upon the applicant any special privilege that is denied by others. The literal interpretation of the provisions of the ordinance would deprive the applicant of rights commonly enjoyed by other properties in the same zoning district under the terms of the ordinance. The variance requested is the minimum variance that will make possible the reasonable use of the land, building, or structure. The granting of the variance will preserve the spirit of the ordinance, remain in harmony with its general purpose and intent. In granting the variance, the public safety and welfare must be assured. And lastly, we don't have an issue with the use. So I'll go through the analysis here, starting on page 12 of this packet. In 2010, the city adopted the Downtown Mixed-Use Smart Code, which are specific to the CRA. Section 32-49, subparagraph A of the code states, the purpose of this section is to implement the CRA plan and vision, the design vision expressed through the Urban Design Manual, which I've included an excerpt of inside your packet, and I'll point to that in a moment, and general intent of the new code expressed in Article 1 of this code. This section simplifies and refines the sign regulations to create a more appropriate, flexible, and marketable way for businesses within downtown CRA to access their patrons through a declarative design scheme. The plan envisions new standards for future development. These standards or regulations will be aimed at preserving the historic character while creating more appealing physical conditions. The goal is to realize a downtown area through smart growth that will attract and sustain private investment and create a unique sense of place. So again, the regulations for the downtown are unique to the downtown, to the DMU zoning district, to the CRA, separate from the rest of the code, which you are very familiar with in previous cases. The application included a statement that it will be difficult for vehicular travelers to see a single 10-foot tall ground sign. The applicant stated that the proposed 25-foot tall ground sign, A, to be located on Garden Street, will be visible to eastbound drivers traveling from US 1 and westbound from the Amex Brewer Bridge. The applicant stated that the proposed 15-foot sign, tall ground sign, B, at the intersection of Garden Street and Indian River Avenue will be visible to drivers on Indian River Avenue. During a phone call with the applicant, we were informed that the reason for the second sign adjacent to Indian River Avenue was based on the fact that the site plan partially was approved already by the CRA. In the downtown, new development site plans that are for properties that are more than an acre or over a certain square footage must go to the CRA for approval. And so that requires a recommendation from the Development Review Committee, which is an administrative level committee made up of staff members. The applicant provided a site plan to us, a layout. We worked with the applicant to try and bring the building closer to the streets as much as possible, considering there were three sides to the frontages on the street, because the downtown code asks for the buildings to be as close as possible to the street, and then asks for certain landscaping and civic frontages along that area to kind of tie in the building to the pedestrian network, as opposed to allowing the building to be further back from the street and separated by a large parking lot. That kind of form is kind of discouraged in the downtown. So that's what we try to work with the applicant on. I'm going to refer you to a layout that I included in the packet that shows the location of the building. On page 37 of your packet, you'll see the proposed layout and the location of the building relative to the three street frontages. You can see that the building is located or proposed to be located in the southeast corner of this lot, so close to Indian River Avenue and to Orange Street. You can also see that the applicant is proposing to put parallel parking spaces along Orange Street, partially on private property, partially in the right-of-way. That can be done with an agreement with the city. That's being worked out through the site plan process. There's also, you can see that it's being located closer to Indian River Avenue, and we also worked with the applicant during the discussions at the DRC level, administrative review of this plan, that we tried to see if we can get the required civic space that's required in the downtown as part of that. so that there could be outdoor seating as part of a restaurant or anything like that that might be occupying this first floor, for example. What we could not do is bring the building closer to Garden Street. And the applicant made the case that there is the Garden Street itself is considered to be an arterial, and that's a primary road. So you really want to try and get the downtown really tries to encourage these buildings to be closer to those major roads. Well, it's difficult here because Garden Street is FDOT maintained, Florida Department of Transportation, and they also have a giant swale between the pavement of Garden Street and the property line. So you can see on the north side of that image there on page 37 of your packet, that swale. So bringing the building closer to Garden Street really wasn't going to really be conducive to trying to create a pedestrian environment. And so we tried to work with the applicant to say, well, we have a trail or a bicycle route that's on Indian River Avenue. Activate those two streets. Activate Indian River and Orange Street instead by bringing the building closer to there. So the parking now is located between the building and Garden Street. This was through the work with the negotiations with the DRC. We made a recommendation for certain waivers, and this was brought to the CRA several months ago and approved as far as this layout. The applicant is proposing two ground signs. You'll see them illustrated on page 37 of your packet again. Sign A is the 25-foot tall sign, and then sign B, you'll see, is the 15-foot tall sign. So you can see that, hopefully you can see those, where those are located, indicated on page 37. Sign A, which is the 25-foot tall sign, the applicant indicated to us that will be, it's oriented in such a way that it'd be visible to drivers on Garden Street. Sign B is oriented in such a way, according to the applicant, that it'd be visible to drivers on Indian River Avenue. And so our argument was that, well, why not utilize wall signage on your wall, on your building, since it's going to be close to Indian River Avenue? So if you're going north on Indian River Avenue, you're going to see the building first prior to seeing the second sign. So that was the case we tried to make with the applicant. And the way it's oriented right now, it appears that we have two signs really facing on Garden Street, even though one of them is on that corner. So with that, I'll go back to the staff report, page 12. So I'll start on line 28 on page 12. The applicant also included a statement that the additional sign heights are consistent with the uptown and civic subdistricts of the downtown mixed-use zoning district. It should be noted that the city's sign regulations allow 25-foot tall ground signs for properties located in the uptown and the civic subdistricts of the downtown mixed-use zoning district that are adjacent to the segment of US 1 between Garden and the Florida East Coast Railroad. So I'm going to try and take you to where that segment is. If you go back to page 39 of your packet, to our zoning map, you will see that what they're talking about is that segment of US 1 that is between the uptown and the civic subdistricts, between the orange colored area and the blue area. That area, that segment of US 1, according to the code of the way we read it, would allow you to have a 25-foot tall ground sign. And our understanding, what we believe that the reason for that is because of that segment of the road actually it elevates, it goes up, and there's a ramp as you keep going north on US 1, all the way out to the point where you just get to we'll go over the railroad tracks. It does not apply, a 25-foot tall ground sign does not apply in the uptown subdistrict along Garden Street. Now, it was brought to my attention that we do have an example of a project that was recently approved with two ground signs that is at the Cumberland Farms, which is west of Hopkins and north of Garden Street in the uptown subdistrict. and both of those ground signs were allowed to be 20 feet. Our understanding based on the code, it says you can, if you have 2 buildings, you're entitled to have 2 ground signs. It doesn't say where they should be located. So that site plan was approved with 2 ground signs for Cumberland Farms to have 2 20-foot tall ground signs. And if you recall, going to the gas station, you'll notice them. So now I'll go back to page 12 of your packet, and I'll try and finish the staff report. So on line 34 of the report, the downtown mixed-use sign code regulates the number, height, and size of ground, monument, and pole. Monument and pole signs are considered ground signs. And wall signs, wall-mounted signs. A wall-mounted sign would be a flat, projecting fin, marquee, or canopy type sign. That would be on the building. Section 32-53 and 32-56 of the code allows up to 2 10-foot tall ground signs for parcels exceeding 1 acre in size and that have more than 1 access point serving more than 1 building. So there are 3 tests here that this project has to meet, and it only meets 2. It doesn't have a second building, so therefore it's not entitled to a second ground sign. That's how we read the code. The property, okay, so I'll go on to the next page, on page 13 of the packet. In addition, the code allows a maximum of 64 square foot sign face for ground signs for properties that are greater than 1 acre, up to 3 acres. So this property is within that range of 1 acre to 3 acres in size, so it's entitled to a 64 square foot sign face. A ground sign, and that's measured based on looking at one side of the sign, can be 64 square feet. A ground sign is considered to be double-faced, so the other side can also be 64 square feet. It's not cumulative of both sides. Sign A is being proposed, which is proposed as 25 feet tall, is proposed with a 64 square foot face. Sign B, which is proposed to be 15 foot tall, is proposed with a 32 square foot face. The applicant has the option to utilize alternative signage types, including wall-mounted signs that are flat, projecting fin, marquee, or canopy type. And this is going back to what I was stating before about the justification for the second ground sign on Indian River Avenue. You have the option of putting a lot of the signage that you need in order to advertise your businesses on buildings without having to put in a second ground sign. The downtown mixed-use zoning district regulation specifies 0 setbacks in order to bring buildings near the street to foster a pedestrian environment. Buildings that are near the street typically do not require a ground sign. Wall-mounted signs such as vertical projecting signs can be seen by vehicular travelers on Indian River Avenue and Orange Street. Wall sign standards are described in section 32-56 of the code. I should note too, I did include in the packet two parts of the code. On page 19 of your packet, I included excerpts from the Urban Design Manual. And these are excerpts from the Urban Design Manual for the Downtown Mixed-Use Zoning District that are related to signage. They provide examples of types of signs that would be acceptable, because according to the code, signs are required to go through a discretionary review. Starting on page 26 of your packet, you'll see additional excerpts from that Urban Design Manual that are related to signage specifically to the downtown subdistrict. On page 29 of your packet, I included excerpts of the Downtown Smart Code that are related to the signage criteria. So I've highlighted on page 29 the section that states that the Urban Design Manual should govern signs in this district. I've also highlighted further down, all signs should be designed to be compatible with the respective storefront and subject building in scale, proportion, and color, and should be visually interesting and compatible in the context of the Downtown Community Redevelopment Agency guidelines. On page 30 of your packet, you'll see I've highlighted there, one wide base monument or pole sign style permanent sign shall be permitted per table 2. And table 2 is located on page 33 of your packet. This is what we're referring to. This is where they need to get their variance. So you'll see on page 32 of your packet, the first column there, sign type. There's monument, there's projection signs, there's fence signs, marquee, or canopy type signs. So we're looking at monument signs. It tells me in the next column there the number of signs allowed, once per single tenant parcel, or 1 + 1 for parcels exceeding 1 acre in size and that have more than one access point serving more than one building. So again, it meets two tests, but not all 3. Sign, the third column there, sign of face. The building is, or the property is between 1 and 3 acres, so it's entitled to a sign face of 64 square feet. And then further down, there are additional criteria for the different types of signs that are building mounted. I believe that's it. So going back to page 13 of your packet, and I apologize for flipping back and forth. I'll finish their staff report. So on line 14, I'll finish there. There are additional standards for projection, fin, marquee, and canopy signs. These include a maximum clear height, maximum canopy area, maximum projection distance from the wall, minimum distance from the public right-of-way, etc. Those are related to their regulations for wall or building-mounted signs. The staff recommends that the applicant submit evidence that the wall-mounted signage provisions of the code cannot be met to justify the second ground sign. So this goes back to the conversation I had with the applicant, that they asked for the second ground sign on Indian River Avenue because people won't see the businesses. So what we're saying is that you can utilize the building as part of your signage. I did put in the last paragraph here. The International Sign Association, which is an association that lobbies for commercial signs, recommends sign dimensions based on the adjacent road speed. US 1 has a road speed of 35 to 45 miles per hour, and the road is partly elevated in the civic and uptown subdistricts of the downtown mixed-use zoning district. So this goes back to my statement about the fact that that segment of US 1, the ramp goes up, so it probably could and the speed is higher, so it could justify a bigger sign. And that's probably why our sign code states that and allows that on that segment of US 1. The civic and uptown subdistricts allow a 25-foot tall ground sign on a segment of US 1 only. Garden Street is a 4-lane undivided street with a speed limit of 30 miles per hour. Indian River Avenue and Orange Street are 2-lane bi-directional streets with speed limits of 25 to 35 miles per hour. The downtown subdistrict of the downtown mixed-use zoning district allows a 10-foot tall ground sign adjacent to all streets. The civic zoning subdistrict also allows a 10-foot ground sign on Garden Street. The applicant is requesting 2 ground signs that are 25 feet and 15 feet, respectively. The downtown mixed-use zoning the downtown mixed-use zoning district restricts 25-foot high ground signs to a small segment of US 1 and does not include Garden and Indian River Avenue. Garden Street also has a lower speed than US 1. Drivers traveling westbound on Garden Street should be able to view a 15-foot tall ground sign and make a decision to turn into the property in the amount of time it takes to drive to the property access from US 1 from the bridge. That's from the Max Brewer Bridge. In addition, drivers should be able to view the building with wall signage driving northbound on Indian River Avenue without relying on a ground sign located north of the building. So based on this, our recommendation is the following. We would approve a variance to allow 1 ground sign a height of 15 feet and deny the request for a second ground sign. Garden Street, State Road 405, has a wide right-of-way. The property line is set back 80 feet from the edge of the Garden Street pavement. This appears to be a special condition and circumstance that is not found anywhere on Garden Street. This large setback from the road pavement would appear to justify a 15-foot tall sign in the downtown subdistrict of the downtown mixed-use zoning district sign height regulations. The extra wide right-of-way adjacent to the property is not the result from the actions of the applicant. The wide right-of-way on Garden Street does not appear to justify a second sign, however. I'm on page 14 of your packet. Although the property is a corner lot, providing two signs visible to the same traffic flow would appear to provide a benefit that is not available to others. The two requested ground signs can be combined. In addition, the proposed building location near Indian River Avenue does not appear to justify a second ground sign north of the building. The applicant should submit evidence that the wall-mounted signage provisions of the code cannot be met to justify the second ground sign. Again, this goes back to my conversation with the applicant about his justification for the second ground sign on Indian River Avenue. Granting the sign height of 15 feet would not appear to confer special privilege due to the special circumstance noted. I'm referring to the extra wide, the swale between the property and Garden Street. So we can justify the 15-foot ground sign for at least one sign. Granting a variance for a second sign does appear to grant a special privilege in the downtown sub-district, since a second building is not proposed on the property. The 10-foot height limitation would appear to deprive the applicant of rights commonly enjoyed by other properties in the same zoning district based on the extra wide right-of-way for Garden Street. Denial of a second ground sign would not deprive the applicant of rights commonly enjoyed by other properties in the same zoning district. The granting of the sign height of 15 feet and the denial of a second ground sign request would be the minimum variance that will make possible reasonable use of the land and building. The granting of the sign height 15 feet will preserve the spirit of the ordinance and remain in harmony with the general purpose and intent. The staff does not believe that the welfare and safety of the public are at risk. Lastly, if the board is inclined to approve a second ground sign, whether that's up to a certain height or the full height being requested, then staff recommends that the sign face area be limited to a maximum total of 64 square feet for all signs. That's cumulative. So, again, this is, I'll try and answer any questions, but this is the request to you is, one, can the applicant have a second ground sign? And two, can these signs be up to the height that's being requested? And if you are going to approve it, we would recommend in that last statement there that you limit the sign face to the maximum allowed in the code of 64 square feet. With that, I'll try and answer any questions you have about this petition.
That's all a lot to comprehend. So the request right now, if it's all right, 64 feet plus a 32.
That's correct.
With the two sides. All right. Questions, staff? Please? None there?
Is that on both sides of the sign, 64 feet, or
Just, no, one side.
just one side?
That would be one side, but it's considered, so we would only count the one side for that maximum.
Maximum.
Right, because the code defines a ground sign to have two faces, but what you're really measuring is just one side.
Just the one side.
For that measurement, yeah.
But they can have two faces to it, right?
On any ground sign, yes.
How about triangular sign? How would that be counted?
That's a different type of sign. If you give me a moment, I could look at the code to see even that's allowed in that downtown. Because that's a different type of sign altogether.
It is. I
Yeah.
mean, is it allowed? And that's what the idea is.
On page 34 of your packet, I've included the definitions of the signs in the downtown sign code. I don't see specifically a triangular type sign there. I apologize, there is a section here that talks about the fact that that's how you measure the area. So if it had three, if it was triangular, it would actually have three sides. That would be a different type of sign, so I don't think that would be
Yeah,
the same
just,
thing.
just a thought, you know, can you have a sign, two signs perpendicular to each other on the same pole, on the same location?
So if you had two ground signs as illustrated here, is what you're saying, hypothetically.
Just one, you know, if you have one
Okay.
sign and perpendicular to each other, you know, with one post, is that one sign or two signs?
Oh, I see what you're saying. Okay, so if you look on page 40 of your packet, I'll show you the illustration, sign A with the solid base. He has illustrated here the first sign, that's just one side, but then he's also showing the side of the sign. And you can see it's got two faces, one on each side of the sign. For purposes of measuring the area of a sign, we look at just one face. But a ground sign is considered to have two faces.
I understand.
Okay. I think, unless I'm misunderstanding it.
The only thing is, let's say you look at page 40, and then you have two signs exactly the same, but perpendicular to each other. You know, they're just one facing one way and the other one facing the other way, but they are all in one location. Is that one sign or two signs?
So if you're saying
By
he had,
definition, it's one sign.
if he had both of these signs standing up to each other, next to each other, perpendicular,
If they created a corner, I think is what he's
Created a
saying.
corner there, you know?
that would be a second sign.
I mean, it's in the same location, right?
The code section 32-53 does say that the sign shall not exceed two faces, so perhaps an additional variance would be required
Thank
if
you.
there's more than two faces to that sign. But that would be a different analysis, and I don't know that that's what
I
the
see.
applicant
Okay.
has on the table.
Maybe. So it's only have two faces to it, and not,
That's part of this code section.
Thank you. Yeah, that's 32-53-2.
Is this a multi-tenant building?
I believe it probably could be considered a multi-tenant building because the applicant is proposing to allow more than one tenant to occupy the building.
And if that's the case, and I understand that the images, the pylon sign A and B are just to get an idea, it's not gonna be exactly what it is, but if this is one company indicating what else is in there, will those other tenants have other sign space?
On the building or,
Either one, I guess.
so if you see on the illustration on sign A, he's illustrated, I would assume to be placeholders for other tenants to occupy signage underneath where it says Beach Wave.
Okay.
There hasn't been a rendering yet of the building itself then. Is that correct? I didn't see a rendering of it, or was it in there?
No, I did not include the rendering of the building. I apologize. I think the applicant may have a rendering, possibly. But they did show us a rendering, but we didn't have measurements attached to it.
Yeah, that was my question about the sign on the, like you said, on the face of the building. What's the building look like? Okay. All right, any other questions of staff?
just one question. I have, it seems like the right-of-way there increases drastically, right? After Burger King, is that what happens?
It looks like the Burger King property probably has the same issue as far as the distance between the front property line and the pavement of Garden Street, but I don't know what that distance is, if it's less than or more than what the subject property has. We estimated 80 feet between the edge of Garden Street pavement to the property line, north property line on the subject property.
That's the Burger King. The one next to it, probably the tackle shop is the closest, right?
Possible.
Yeah.
It does have a swell.
Yeah, but it has, that's a DOT maintained, it's not the city, right?
Correct. Yeah, that's the Florida Department of Transportation.
All right, if there's no other questions of staff, we'll open it up to the public at this time. And is the applicant available to speak? All right, and call her name, please. Do we have a card for the applicant?
Yes, sir, we do.
Okay, thank you. Welcome. May we have your name and address for the record, please?
Yes, sir. My name is Kim Rosanka. I am with the law firm of Cantwell and Goldman in Cocoa, Florida. I'm here representing Wave Developments LLC that owns and is developing this property. With me is Moshe Gall. He is the representative of Wave Developments LLC. And I will answer many of your questions, and I have pictures and renderings and more information than you're going to want to know. It's going to get even more complicated, let me tell you. And I apologize, but this is a very unique piece of property. And frankly, from a development standpoint, very difficult to plan properly. It's about 80 feet, that right-of-way, it's owned by FDOT. We tried to get them to surplus it, they won't. We tried to get them to let us put a sign in their right-of-way, they won't. There's a Florida statute that says we can't. So it's a difficult piece of property. The building footprint is 16,800 square feet. Beach Wave Beachwear is the main tenant. It will have about 12,000 square feet. It's got 5 tenants. It's got a restaurant, a tiki bar, an observation desk, Beach Wave Beachwear, and then another retail. You'll see some rendering that says smoke shop, but it's not really a smoke shop. And your code only allows 1 wall sign per tenant per entrance. So you have 4 sides of a building, and we can only have 5 wall signs. So that's what's partially causing the problem and causing the request for 2 signs. Mr. Gall has 7 Beach Wave stores in Brevard County. It's a brand. Unfortunately, it's not a destination. It's a drive-by. People stop there when they're looking for souvenirs when they're going to the beach. About 90% of his business is drive-by. About 10% is repeat business, or people that know about Beach Wave and they're picking up souvenirs to take back home. So it is reliant on signage, heavily reliant on signage. And we've had several sign issues with many cities around the county. So this is nothing new. And we understand sign codes are supposed to be uniform, but this property is very unique. And because your sign code is so limiting, that's why we're requesting the second sign. As I said, marketing is mainly the signage on his building. And this alone makes it unique for most of the downtown businesses, which are destination. People go to the bait shop because they want to go to the bait shop. People go to Cumberland Farms because they need gas. People go to CVS because they need prescriptions or sundries. So Mr. Gall has hired a sign company, Art Craft Signs, and that's why you have those renderings. And those renderings are 25 feet and 15 feet with 2 feet sides. We were under the misconception we had to have a monument sign, but according to what I'm hearing, we can have the pole sign. So disregard those monument signs. Those are not attractive, not what he wants to put up, but that's what he thought he had to have. So it would be 2 poles with all the tenants listed on those signs. I have something that hopefully will make this a little more apparent to you. What you have in your packet is not very helpful, so I have an actual aerial that I printed. Start in each direction. The property at issue is what's in the red markings. And you can see I'm directionally challenged up here. To the west is the Burger King. It has no signage on the Maxborough Memorial Parkway. Its signage is on Orange Street and Washington Avenue, and it has 2 signs. The Papa John's is at the corner there, and I'm not sure if it has 2 signs or not. It does have a sign at the corner. And then you have the bait shop to the east of the Papa John's. Across Washington Street is CVS. CVS has 3 signs, may even have 4. There may be 2 on each of the southern entrances. No, I think there's just 3 signs on this property. Then across the street you have Kentucky Fried Chicken, which has a small sign, but apparently could have a 25-foot sign. And then further to the west is the new Cumberland Farms. We would submit that Cumberland Farms doesn't have 2 buildings. It's got 1 building. The canopy's not a building. So we're not sure how they got 20 feet, but we think that's reasonable, and my client would accept 20 feet instead of 25 feet although we really think 25 is required because of the distance from the right-of-way. So the location of this property and its boundaries are unique from those of the surrounding properties, you can see from this aerial. Also, I just want to point out before I go much further, I understand there are people here from the condominiums to the east. They are at least 500 feet from the sign, and all they will see will see sign B, and they'll see 2 feet of the side. So it's going to be a nominal impact on them from a visual perspective. This business is also unique because it has 3 street frontages. The only other, actually Cumberland Farms has 3 street frontage if you consider the FDO, the access point off US 1, and then CVS. But again, CVS has 3 signs in the same zoning district, in the same downtown district. All of Beachwear business must be generated from these 3 street frontages. He will get no business at all from South Washington. There's no way they can see this property from South Washington. The setback of 80 feet from the edge of the pavement is due to the FDOT right-of-way. The 25-foot sign, the A sign, which will be facing east and west, is going to be at least 80 feet from the right-of-way. There's also a big clump of trees there in FDOT right-of-way that we can do nothing about. I guess we can ask them to trim it, but it's going to be very near that clump of trees in the right-of-way. And it will be facing east and west, and hopefully at 25 feet. The distance from the right-of-way requires a larger sign so it is seen from Garden Street, Maxborough traffic in a timely manner. Also, the business to the west, Papa John's and the Bait House, are set back much closer to Maxborough or Garden Street and blocks the line of traffic. And I have a picture for you that I'll show you later during this presentation. So again, people traveling to the east from Garden Street, Max Brewer, they're going to not be able to see it right away because that sign is way far back and those 2 buildings block it. The second sign, the 15-foot sign, the B sign, is on Indian River Drive. The staff keeps claiming it's on the same right-of-way. It's not. It is on Indian River Drive, and it faces north and south. It is definitely not attracting the same traffic, not intended to attract the same traffic. It's going to be essentially in the parking lot, so there may be someone misses sign A and happens to catch sign B and turns onto Indian River Drive, but it is to catch the traffic on Indian River Avenue. There's limited wall signage on Indian River Avenue, and none of it is for Beachwear, which is the large tenant. I'm going to mix that up, I know. If this project had 2 buildings, it would be allowed 2 ground signs per the city code. Because Wave Development chose to do 1 building with 5 tenants, which is its business model, the city code essentially discriminates against Wave Development and limits the property to 1 ground sign. And I do have renderings for you as well. Because the city code limits wall signs, because the sub-districts to the north and west allow 2 ground signs, and because other businesses in close proximity to the property have 2 or 3 ground signs for a single tenant, fairness would dictate that this property be allowed 2 ground signs. Do you all have the sub-districts in color? I wasn't sure if you all had them. Okay, because they're on your computer, so I don't need to show you those. But again, as I read the code, and if you go back to page 33, it's 33 in my packet. I heard Mr. Parrish say 32, but it's the sign 2, sign design criteria. It says 25 feet max for uptown or civic waterfront for properties adjacent to US 1. It doesn't stop right there at Garden Street. It continues on further to the south, and may indeed include Kentucky Fried Chicken. And also, while I'm here, if you look to the left where it says size of the face, if it's up to 1 acre, the size of each sign face can be 50 to 64 square feet. So I don't see any justification for limiting a second sign, if you should give that variance, to 32 square feet. There's been no rationale for that provided by staff when the code says if you have over 1 acre, you can have that size. Also, we believe the sign should be allowed to be commensurate with those nearby, such as Cumberland Farms. And I have a picture of Cumberland Farms and their signs. And again, you have two signs. You have one on the east side and one on the northwest side. And according to Mr. Parrish, those are 20 feet. And there is no second building that's discernible from this picture. And that is in the Uptown District. It appears to be off of the arterial from US 1 and possibly could have been at 25 feet, but maybe their business model is 20 feet, I don't know. I'd like to talk briefly about the staff report and analysis. The staff report says that projecting wall signs might work on Orange and Indian River. However, that's incorrect for many reasons. First, there's no wall signage allowed for the main tenant because Beachwave Beachwear will be facing north. That's where their entrance is. That's the only wall sign they're allowed to have. So the main tenant, the anchor tenant, can only have one wall sign that no one will see unless they're traveling Garden Street. So that's why it's important to have a second sign so people can see Beachwave coming from Indian River Avenue. Second, those type of signs are not part of the types of sign used by Beachwave. Again, this is a business model. He has 7 of these stores in Brevard County alone. Third, the building is so close to the sidewalk in Indian River as requested by city staff and approved by the CRA. It's very close. And they have that civic area. It would be difficult to have a projecting sign because there's not enough space. Okay, also regarding the city staff, the staff cites the International Sign Association's sign recommendations, but they don't state what those are. I have them for you too. I found them online. I don't understand them. They don't say what the city staff says they say, so it's confusing to me why it was even brought up in the staff report. Third, staff recommends a 15-foot sign on Garden Street, on Indian River Avenue with no reason, they do. They recommend a 15-foot sign on Garden Street with no reason why a 25-foot should not be approved. Again, you've got blockage to the west, you've got a very large right-of-way, and you've got people going, as soon as they get off that street light, they're moving fast. And you can't see much from that street line. You can't really see this property, and I have a picture for you. Fourth, staff recommends denial of a second sign with no other rationale than wall signage should suffice. When I show you the renderings, you'll see why it won't suffice, because you don't get all the tenants on Indian River Drive on the wall signs. Fifth, staff states that if you should approve a second sign, only allow 10 feet with only 32 square foot of signage. Again, with no reasoning. There's no rationale between that when you have Cumberland Farms that has 2 signs at 20 feet. The second sign is to attract drivers from the Indian River, the second sign also can attract drivers from the Sandpoint Park to the north. But again, that right-of-way is 250 feet, approximately from that sign to the park to the north. So a 10-foot sign with 32 square foot, they're not going to really see it. All right, now I have a larger package for you with the renderings and photos I've been promising. But I know that if I give it to you early, you start flipping through and don't pay much attention. So. It's habit, it's human nature, I do the same thing.
There you go.
Oh, yes.
Everyone got one, right? Okay, good. All right, the first diagram is the overlay and the rendering that was approved by the CRA. So this is just to give you a little more context of what we're talking about. We hand wrote in the A and the B sign so you have a better idea of where they are, what size they are. And I wanted to orientate you because the west side of the building is considered the back side of the building. That's the one that faces Burger King. So it's a little awkward because of this property. As I said, it's difficult to develop. And you see the landscape area on Orange Street. You see the little area, what they call the civic area on the Indian River Avenue, which to me looks like an extended sidewalk with park benches. And you also see the buildings to the west in relation to where Beachwear is going to be. Again, Beachwear is facing to the north. That will be its entrance. Do you have any questions on this document? Okay.
From this look, see where the B sign is. You said the staff said 10-foot tall sign, is that what you said? Is that what
Yes.
you meant?
If you approve a second sign.
If we approve, okay, I understand.
But
If
we've
that-
asked for
if that's-
15.
If that is a parking space, typical car or van is what, 4 or 5 feet tall? So that just leaves about a few feet above it, okay. All right,
And actually, you have the rendering of 15-foot sign, so if you want to compare it to those
Oh.
numbers, and I appreciate that, because I hadn't even thought of that. The next page is the elevations and the signage and what the building will look like. The building is in black and white, but you see the signs are in color. And the top is the north elevation, and that will be the only signage for Beachway Beachwear, the 12,000 square foot anchor tenant, facing north. The south elevation, which is Orange Street, you'll have what I said, it says smoke shop on the left, but that's just going to be a retail tenant. And then you have the tiki bar and the observation deck. So again, on Orange Street, there's absolutely nothing that says this is Beach Wave, and people driving down Indian River won't see the A sign. That's why we've asked for the B sign.
so these different businesses are not interconnected?
No, they're all-
They will be independent of each other. You'll have to go through their door or
Yes,
or
sir,
whichever entrance it is. Can't just get in the middle and go all over.
correct. And then the next document is a rendering of the building of sorts. It's just from Indian River Avenue, and you can see Orange Street in the rendering, but that shows, the signage. That shows, the tiki bar and the observation deck. That's about what the wall signage allows. And if you look around the corner, you can see another sign on the east elevation, which, turning the next page, is the east elevation and the west elevation. The east elevation has the restaurant. You might see the corner, and that's from Indian River Drive, the east elevation. And the west elevation is next to Burger King, which, as I said, is the back of the building, so there's no signage whatsoever. And there's no tenant entrances. But also, too, this building, and it's hard to read those numbers, but the building up to the bottom of the parapets, the decorative parapets, is 35 feet. So it's a two-story building. And then the next picture is a picture I took last week standing out on Garden Street, right there at the CVS entrance, looking east. And again, you've got buildings and you can, just behind the Papa John's awning, you can see that big frock of trees that I was talking about that's going to be in front of the A sign. So you won't see that sign when you're stopped at the street sign on Washington and Garden. And then the next 3 pages is the International Sign Association recommendations. And it's about designing a sign. And it says to hire a professional, which Mr. Gall has done. And they have recommended 2 signs. They've recommended the height of the signs. It does have at the bottom something about how far away you need to be if you're going to see a sign, if the cars are going so fast and if the speed limits and you've got a lane change. But that's to determine the size of the lettering. And it talks about the size of the lettering on the next page. So there may be more of the international sign design, but this wasn't helpful to us to try to refute what the staff said, because we didn't understand the point of them even bringing it into the staff report. And it does have distances and how far away you need to be, but doesn't say how big the sign has to be. It says how big the lettering has to be. And again, Mr. Gall has hired sign professionals to design the signs, which are in your packet. The next 2 pages are the signs in the area, as I've mentioned repeatedly. On the first page, you've got 2 CVS signs. There is a smaller one. I just didn't want to use any more colored ink. So there is 3 signs on CVS. It's a much smaller ground sign, more of an exit sign, but it's still probably at least 5 feet tall, 5 by 4, but it's on the ground. And then you have the 2 Burger King signs. The top one is on Washington, and the bottom one is on Orange. So they have 2 signs right next door. And again, they have visibility from Washington, whereas Wave Developments does not. The next page is the Cumberland Farms, the 2 different signs, which you've already seen in in the larger picture. And then there's 2 signs for 7-Eleven as well, which is in the same DMU district, same. And I know these signs are older. I don't know if they were before or after the 2010. I suspect some of these were replaced after some of the hurricanes. But it just shows what's in the area and why this is similar and why it's compatible. And this property has 3 frontages, which is somewhat unusual. And I know you've heard me talk a lot about business model, and this is his design, and this is what he does, and this is why he doesn't have projecting signs. And the reason I bring that up is because there is a Florida statute that deals with this issue. And I bring it up to you now just for purposes. I wasn't aware of it until about 4 months ago when I was listening to a continuing education class. But it's in the building code. I'm going to provide that to you and try to explain why I think it's relevant and you should consider it. Okay, this is section 553.79. I've condensed it because 20A is the part that's important. And it states a political subdivision may not adopt or enforce any ordinance or impose any building permit or other development order requirement that contains any building, construction, or aesthetic requirement or conditions that conflicts with or impairs corporate trademarks, service marks, trade dress, logos, color patterns, design, scheme, insignia, image standards, or other features of corporate branding identity on real property or improvements. So again, we just bring that because this is a corporate branding issue, and because your sign code limits so much what can be done on this building, that we want you to understand that it's important that the wall signs are against the wall and not projecting out. And even if they were projecting out at Orange or Indian River, it wouldn't be advertising the main tenant, beach wave, beachwear. So this is only to say why we're not doing projecting signs. Okay. To summarize, this property is unique. The conditions were not caused by Wave Developments LLC. The company bought the property in the condition it is. It was configured that way when he purchased it. He didn't subdivide it. The variances requested do not confer a special benefit on this property because all others in the area have been given multiple ground sides at height greater than 10 feet. Cumberland Farms is the prime example. These 3 variances are minimal needed to allow the property to have the same benefits that others in the areas have and to allow the main tenant, Beach Wave Beachwear, to draw in its customer base to be successful. Again, 90% of its business is drive-by. We'd ask that you please approve these 3 variances as requested.
Are there questions of this witness?
Has the tenant or the owner applicant considered that Indian River Avenue is local traffic? It's not actual, what I would classify as beach traffic or tourist traffic. Does that make a difference in his position?
Mr. Gall, you have to come up here.
And if you wouldn't mind, state your name and address for the record, please.
Oshrigal, 140 St. Croix Avenue, Cocoa Beach. Can you repeat the question, please?
I was asking, since Indian River Avenue it's local traffic. It's a relatively short street. I think there's several stop signs, a couple houses on there. It's not a main thoroughfare. So considering that is truly local traffic who's gonna know your building's there anyway, versus US Garden Street and the Maxborough Bridge, which is tourist traffic, does that affect or change your position on signage on Indian River Avenue?
I personally, and I think a lot of people nowadays use GPS, and GPS always brings you the shortest distance to your destination. And I believe if people would use the National Shores as a destination and they're traveling north on US 1, I would believe it would take them through Indian River because it does connect to US 1 towards the end of it, south. So I do believe that there would be potential customers traveling on Indian River.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Seeing none, thank you very much.
Thank you, sir.
And our next card, please.
Thomas Altiff.
Okay, is this a for or against, ma'am?
4.
For, okay. Yes, sir.
Thomas Alta, 3 Indian River Avenue, Unit 505. I own several businesses in town, including the Art Gallery downtown. I previously was located downtown, Kayaks by Bow. I recently moved to the Barn Light building where I have better signage. I think Brad and his staff have done a great job with the smart code, and I just want to compliment them on that. However, I think in this instance, there should be an exception. The way that lot is where the lot is located and how the traffic pattern is there, I think it's important to have a larger sign than what the code calls for. And living on that street and living in those condominiums, it's a race. As soon as that light changes, those cars are going fast. I know it's 30 miles an hour, but you rarely see one going that speed. I believe it's an important project. I believe that the signage for the type of business that Beach Wave is necessary. People are going to have to be able to see that sign and turn into that parking lot without slamming their brakes on.
Okay. Any questions of this witness?
No.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
All right, next, please.
Oshri Gall. Donna Scott, against.
Welcome.
Hello. Donna Scott, 7 Indian River Avenue, apartment 807. I am against the 2 signs and the 25 feet, but I agree with the city's proposal to have a variance to allow for the 15 feet. If you look on page 18 of your packet, on number 4 of their application, the last sentence in that says, finally, the second sign will not result in the appearance of too many signs in the area because the properties to the east, which is Harbor Point, is public lands, but we're not public lands. There's over 200 units in that. And our units start at floor 3 and go up. So we will see both signs depending on what unit we live. You know, it's not just a single building, it's 3 separate buildings. I've been the recipient of both positive and negative variances, so I understand the plight when you're trying to make differences in businesses and have signage. But I also feel as well that if they've done 7 other beach waves throughout the county and have been aware of sign issues throughout different municipalities, is that they probably should have looked at this property a little bit deeper before they came and, you know, are trying to get a 25-foot sign that I don't think blends well with the neighborhood.
Any questions?
No.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, as you speak, turn them in, yes. Yeah, you're supposed to turn those in before, when I was making all the announcements.
Is it too late?
Bring them up, please. You, everybody, yeah, that was my speech. You weren't listening.
Donald Owen, against.
Okay. Your name and address for the record, please, sir.
Donald Owen, 5 Indian River Avenue, Unit 806. And, I heard a lot being discussed tonight relative to the zoning issues and a lot about the existing signs. And, a lot of these signs are very old. The regulations that existed back 20 years ago, I have no idea. But, a lot of things were mentioned about the necessity of a sign on Indian River Avenue. The traffic, as Mrs. Rodriguez stated, the traffic on Indian River Avenue is negligible majority of the time. You know, the biggest time traffic is there is when the city's closed down for having a street party. That's when the traffic's directed over. Otherwise, it's just local traffic. It's not, you know, traffic coming from you know, bypassing through Titusville. You know, I know you guys will be making a decision as to whether to provide a variance, and I just ask that you do due diligence and take into consideration that, you know, aesthetically, you know, we need to, you know, keep the city looking like a city and not, you know, resort back to things that maybe were done in the past and compare the, you know, huge, large signs that other buildings or businesses may have. But just, you know, you have the, you know, you can very easily, you know, say that there's, you know, keep the height limitations and the quantity of signs where it is now and not, you know, provide a variance.
Are there any questions of this witness? No. Thank you very much, sir. Next card.
Yumi Clark, against?
Forgive me, I took a picture of my notes I scribbled back there. My name is Yumi Clark. I live at 5 Indian River Avenue, 605, and I am against the sign ordinance, the variance request, primarily on the Indian River side. I probably sound like a broken record, but we do have these sign ordinances and codes on purpose. The focus of our community should be the nature and the architecture, not a big 25-foot sign, especially on the Indian River Avenue side. I moved here because of Titusville's nature and space, so I'd like the focus to remain on our nature and space. And with that, on the Indian River side, I'm a pedestrian there every day, on bike or on foot, walking my dog and things like that, as most of the people who traffic Indian River are frequently on foot, passing through the city, going to walk downtown and things like that, not really on our way to the beach or anything like that. That traffic is primarily Garden Street. And for me, it would be nice that if a sign isn't taller than our Space Park Memorial pieces and doesn't compete with anything there or distract from our Space Park right there. So I think that Indian River Avenue traffic, it would be really nice that the focus is a space park and not, you know, a sign. And I do worry about what this could lead to down the road. So.
Thank you. Any questions of this witness? No. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Josh Clark, against?
Thank you for letting me speak. I'm sorry about the mix-up with the request. My name's Josh Clark. I'm at Building 5, number 605, Indian River Avenue in Titusville, obviously. And just a couple of things I want to chime in on what some of my neighbors have said as well. I think that these signs need a variance for a reason, and the reason is that they don't fit the look that Titusville is going for. It sounds like with some of the recent projects like Cumberland Farms, we're already starting to go down a bit of a slippery slope. But that doesn't mean that we have to keep going down that slope. We can stop and regain our footing, and this is a really great chance to do that. Again, chiming in with some of my neighbors, the traffic on Indian River Road does not need a sign at all. It just does not. There will be plenty of traffic coming toward the beach, and no one's going to take Indian River Road. So the second sign is unnecessary. And I think that the other sign, the height of the other sign, is much more suited to gas stations along the highway or on the strip of Cocoa Beach, not plucked and put right in downtown Titusville. I don't think it's going to fit. I don't think it'll look right, and I think it's a step in the wrong direction for the town. So thank you for hearing me out.
Any questions of this witness?
No.
Thank you.
Very much, sir. Are there any more cards?
No, sir.
Okay. Does the applicant wish to make any rebuttals to?
Thank you. Kim Rosenka, representing Wave Developments LLC. Regarding Ms. Scott's comment, I mentioned I'm directionally challenged. I meant the property to the south was public property. Obviously, the condo is not public property, and I apologize for that mistake. Regarding due diligence of this property. Mr. Gall did his due diligence. In fact, he was given the wrong sign code when he first went to start designing sign codes and was later told that, oh no, there's a special section because you're in a special section of the downtown. So he initially thought when he bought the property, he got two signs because of the way the sign code is written. And your staff will tell you it's complicated to follow your sign code. So, because there's so many sub-districts. Regarding the traffic on Indian River, I don't know if it's heavily trafficked or not heavily trafficked, but the sign is also facing Sandpoint Park. And there is an entrance ramp right there. I don't know if it's open all the time. I know I tried to drive through it the other day, but I did drive up to it, and I was looking straight across at the property. I was almost going to take a picture. So it is also to draw, and they drive right by there. There's the path through there. So it is also to draw traffic from the other side, and walkers and pedestrians and bike riders from the other side. Also, sign B, in addition to facing north, is giving drivers on Garden Street, Maxborough, a second chance to see sign B on Indian River Drive facing the other direction. If they don't see sign A, the bigger sign, and also they're never going to see the wall sign as they're driving by at 40 or 45 at that because they're not going to be looking. They're going to be looking for the sign. Yeah, I know it is, but people don't follow speed limits all the time, and that's as Mr. Alto said. So again, looking at the sign B that's in your packet, the face of the sign is 6 foot. So if you put it at 10 feet, you're right, the car is going to block the bottom of it, especially if it's a van or a truck. So that's why the 15 feet is more appropriate. And you have the renderings there in your packet. I would ask you to approve all three variances. Thank you.
Thank
All
you.
right. Thank you. Okay, so that takes care of all the cards that we have submitted, so we will close the public hearing part of the hearing and bring it back to us. And are there questions or comments to be made?
A question of staff.
Okay.
Can you address if this property has the main tenant of the beachwear store and they have the entire building and the bulk of that building? Ms. Rosenka had indicated that they're not getting any signage on the side of the street on Indian River because of the nature of the doors and how many businesses are there. Can you address that?
I believe you're referring to the exhibit that was provided to us, wave to you for wave development. So there was on page 3, it looks like, of this packet that was given to us. It looks like there's some wall signs.
Show us what you.
I'm sorry, I'm referring to
picture.
the,
No, I know that, but which
page
one of
3.
these?
Yeah, it sounds like
The
they
colored
would
one?
not be permitted to have a wall sign on the Indian River side
Oh, that one.
of the
That's-
building.
This is the one you're referring to? I think, based on your question, it
Yeah.
sounds like this is what you're referring to.
Yeah.
Okay. So this is the first time I've seen this. To say, I think your question is, how does this,
Well,
Are
my
there-
question is, if they can't, if the proposal is, can they get a wall sign on the Indian River side? But is there an entrance to another building on Indian River side? No? Okay.
there's
they
entrances
permitted
on the
to have-
corners.
Are they permitted to have a wall sign on Indian River Drive for the main owner and tenant?
Well, we don't regulate the content of the signs.
Right?
But as far, all we can say, I can refer you to page 32 and 33 of your packet. Those
Okay.
two tables. That tells us how many signs and types of signs you can put attached to your building.
Right.
So I'd have to take this information and run this by our building department to see what is consistent, how this is consistent with this code, and see whether they would be required to receive any variances or what the interpretation of the administrator would be in this case. This is the first time we've seen it.
Okay.
And I'm sorry, Mr. Parrish just saw that. We sent it to the city a month ago. Those renderings were sent to the city a month ago.
Renderings were sent to us, but without dimensions.
So if you look on page 31 of your packet, section 32-55,
31. Hey, wait a minute, give us a chance. 31?
32-55, your sign code,
Right.
And it says, for buildings with separate tenant entrances, in addition to the ground-mounted sign, tenants shall be permitted on the exterior walls of a building at a location near the principal tenant entrance. One sign per tenant. And the main entrance for Beach Wave is on the north side of the building.
And you said
There's no other entrance.
but you said there's also no entrances to any other tenants on the Indian River side?
Right, they're on the corners.
On the corners. Okay.
So, I mean, so you can see it as you're walking by or driving by, because you should be able to see some of it, but you're not going to be able to see the Beach Wave beachwear because their only entrance is on the north side, and
Right.
that's from the sign code.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Discussion or further questions? Anyone here?
I have a quick question for Brad. Yeah, we have sign A, sign B, Brad, right? And sign A could be anywhere on the front. Anywhere along Garden Street. It could be to the east side where, the Indian River is, right?
In our recommendation, in our recommendation, we didn't prescribe where that sign should be, which one you should provide a variance to. We just basically said,
But it could be anywhere, right?
provide, with the limitations of setbacks and everything else, of course.
As long as they meet the code, they can have it anywhere in there. Okay. So in reality, there is no say of where, if a sign could be, you can put the sign on Indian River, or you can put it on the other side of the,
We're not prescribing that here in our recommendation, no. We're leaving that to the applicant.
okay.
Other questions or comments? This side's quiet.
Well, as far as comments go, first of all, US 1 doesn't connect to Indian River Drive, for starters. It connects to, I think, Riverside Drive, and then you can take it up to Indian River. So it's certainly minimal traffic, for starters. It's truly the people that live right there. And there's a bike path, which obviously, and a lot of walkers, which wouldn't need a 15-foot, 20 or 25-foot sign, for starters. On the other hand, if the main tenant, I mean, when I read the section of the code 3255 and it says near the entrance, I don't think the definition of near is anywhere in there. So if they're able to put some sort of wall sign, be it a hanging sign with their name on it, they're actually hitting the local walking traffic. And then I also think there's probably not a whole lot of walking traffic except the people coming from Burger King and around the corner, because there is that park monument right next to it. And so you get a little further down Broad Street. I would also like to say, and I know these are just renderings, to me the pole sign is much worse than a monument sign. Just putting that out there, visually speaking. I think it's reasonable for a taller sign than the 10 feet on Garden Street. But as far as, be it the city or the applicant, as far as the argument about anything being visible and stopping in time, I mean, yeah, people fly over the bridge. It is 30 miles an hour, but nobody goes 30 miles an hour. And even when you intend to turn on Indian River, people always have to make the U-turn anyway. So, I mean, bottom line is, the sign is gonna serve purpose or not gonna serve purpose, but no one's gonna actually slow down to see anything there. And coming over the hill, people should be paying closer attention to the cars in front of them and not so much the street sign. I will say, if there was creative thinking involved on Garden Street and Indian River in that intersection, it creates a triangle. So they are right that people coming back from the beach can make that first left onto Indian River Drive. I don't think the proposed sign is gonna do them any good right there. But quite frankly, if they were to have a triangular sign, Garden Street, the entrance to Garden Street, the entrance to Garden Street, and another sign, a three-sided sign, which is still outside the code. And I don't even know how that would look visually. That would actually solve everyone's problem in this room. And as far as the Florida statute goes, as far as brands go, I don't think the code is meant to bend for businesses that are moving into the place. If businesses are already in existence, then that certainly makes sense, but this building is not here yet. And we're not forcing anyone to change anything.
You're nodding your head. Any comments, staff?
No, sir.
Okay. All right, this side's been quiet. Y'all have any comments or thoughts?
I will say that I think on the Indian River side, I don't personally see the value of a pole-mounted sign on Indian River. I think building signs or, what is it, fin sign would be suitable, more in keeping with the character on Indian River Avenue. I have to confess on the Garden Street issue, I definitely think they have an issue with the setback, but I'm not sure that a 25-foot sign solves the issue with the setback. I just don't really quite see that. I don't think someone is going to see a 25-foot sign from US 1 and immediately decide, oh, I'm going to Beach Wave. It just doesn't, it seems to me that the 15 feet is adequate, in my opinion, on Garden Street as well. The location of the sign is another issue, which I think Sid was getting at. And I wondered on the entrance to this business, I noticed there's a little divided section. I'm not sure what the requirements are for signage setbacks, but I noticed one section of that entrance was divided. And bringing that up, mention that only in the situation of where a potential sign could be positioned. Is that not a consideration?
Mr. Kilpatrick, I'm not understanding which area you're talking
The
about.
entrance to the Beach Wave
Okay,
building itself.
from Garden
It's
Street?
in DOT's right of way, though.
Yeah, it's in, I know, but
And you
obviously.
can't put a sign in the DOT
But
right of way.
someone had to vacate that, I mean,
Are you talking about the drive, they have to,
Yeah, their
they have
driveway.
legal, they have to get, FDOT has to at least provide them some access to that street.
okay. That's what,
I think
actually, that's what I was wondering about. If this was more a case of like a flag lot type of issue where that was access that was permanently granted.
They would have to apply for a right-of-way permit from FDOT for that driveway to Garden
Okay.
Street.
But you could put a sign on it.
Yeah.
That would be different.
Thank you.
Again, when you think about the sign, think about, what Cumberland Farms did. They have a 20-foot sign. And coming east from Garden Street, and then that's where the bend is, and it goes to the north. So the more you put the sign to the north, the better it is, but it has to stay within the property. So that's the best way to see it. But now, consistent with Garden Street, I think the applicant's talking about, they can live with a 20-foot sign. So that could be acceptable on the first sign, sign A.
Yeah.
And I feel it's something that could be consistent with Cumberland Farms, which is, they have two signs. I don't think they came in for a variance on that.
No, sir, they did not need to at that time.
They didn't need to come in for a
No.
variance, right?
It was mentioned earlier about the definition or dispute about what the definition of building is. According to the code, there's a very broad definition of what a building is. So the interpretation of the administrator of the code was that the gas canopy structure is considered a structure, considered a building. And so that entitled them a second sign. So they received a sign, the two 20-foot tall ground signs, one on the east side of the property and one on the south side of the property, as illustrated in the image that was provided to you.
So the height of that is 20 feet?
According to the permit that that was given to me, they were permitted to be 20 feet tall.
Oh, okay. Does it meet that same 64 feet in theory?
I did not do these measurements myself, but I assume that they would have to have met that,
Okay.
if that was the standard for that sub-district, yes.
Okay. Well, I too am inclined that the second sign is not that relevant, but then again, I can see because it's so far from the road, a good presence for that main sign. And whether it's 20, 25 feet, I don't have a definition of that, but I think that it definitely should be a main sign there, whether you're coming off the bridge or once you come through the intersection there at Garden Street and North Washington, South Washington, wherever it meets there. The canopy of trees will keep it not visible until you actually get about the bait shop. Then you'll see the sign. So I'm inclined to one good-sized sign and not two signs myself. So if that's the case, I'll entertain a motion of which way we want to try to look at this, or.
Do we know how tall the signs are for, I think they're low signs for Burger King and Papa John's? I think I heard it, but I didn't have my pen, so I didn't write it down.
The one on Garden Street is pretty tall, but the one on the other street is
The Burger King sign?
yeah, the Burger King sign is on
Orange
Garden
is
Street
short.
is pretty high.
Because across the street at the park, I mean, there's nothing at the park. You can't enter Sandpoint through that area. I don't think the marina has a sign, and KFC is a smaller sign, oddly enough. I mean, I think the sign on Garden Street should be in close height to the other surrounding signs.
Which is the 20 feet.
I know Cumberland Farms is 20 feet. I didn't know what the other two are.
The Burger King sign's been there a long time. I don't know what the height is on that one. Papa John's just has a little short sign on the corner.
That's right.
Okay.
This is the one.
Yeah, you got pictures in the back of our package.
Oh, yeah.
Okay. Somebody's got to do something. I can't do it. Lucky me? Okay. All right, so we have two requests, right? Back to page, what was that page? Was that 12? Okay, there we go. We got the 32-51. Yeah, 53 and 56, 23. Okay.
So if we approve, the variance for the sign, are we approving the location of the sign?
No.
No.
So the
That-
the variance will be just to have a sign, right?
Oh, to exceed the
And then
10
the second
feet
sign.
if we want to go higher than 10 feet.
Yeah.
That's where 2 is. 10 feet is the code right now, right?
Which one is it?
Correct.
Are you on page 10? Yeah, the
Page
first part.
33 of your packet, you'll see the code section, the table 2, and it states 10 feet is the max in all sub-districts.
For some guidance also, the summary explanation on background on page 8 lists 1 and 2, which describes the two different issues associated with tonight's variance request.
Oh, yeah. Bottom of the page there, yeah. Or middle of the page, whatever it is. So it's two questions. One sign or two signs? And the second section is the height. Basically, yeah, okay. So that's our two. Okay. We have 4 alternatives. We gotta do one or the other.
I just need a second.
Oh, okay, you need a second. Thank
You
you.
need 2 seconds.
2 seconds, all right.
I need to write it down.
You got a pen?
You got it formulated?
Council, you want 2 motions? Okay.
There's 2 requests, so either we can come up with something
Then-
new or follow along with the request.
I
and
guess
alter them.
I'll try my hand at this.
Okay.
Regarding variance 2-2019 to allow 2 ground signs in lieu of the maximum 1 sign pursuant to 3253. My motion is to deny the request for 2 signs. Specifically, a sign on Indian River Avenue. On the grounds that it would violate the spirit of the ordinance and it is not the minimum variance that would make the reasonable use of the land.
Okay. So I had a motion to deny kind of section 1.
second that.
We have a second. Any other discussion? Everybody understands what she has said, right?
Just one, for
Comment?
discussion.
She had
yeah.
discussion, sure.
For discussion, you mentioned that the sign, you don't want the sign, or actually the sign on Indian River Avenue is out, right, completely out. But that sign could move to Indian River Avenue. They could move that sign and put it at Indian River Avenue, so.
During the entire presentation, my understanding was they wanted a sign on Garden Street and they wanted a sign on Indian River. I understand that if they're permitted 1 sign, then they could certainly put it wherever they wanted.
Yeah.
I'm not sure it would be the best business decision to put it on Indian River, but
Okay.
I can modify my motion to simply say deny 2 signs if that makes it more appropriate.
Okay. Would you second still stand?
My second will stand.
All right. May we have roll call, please, then?
Chairman Taylor,
Yes.
Vice Chairman Shahab,
Yes.
Member Johnson,
Yes?
Member Smith Rodriguez,
Yes.
Alternate Member Kilpatrick.
Yes.
Okay. So that's part 1. We got it down to 1 sign. Now we go to the second part where the applicant is requesting a 25-foot tall where code says it is 10 feet. Is that correct? Code is 10 feet, right?
Correct.
All right. So do I have a recommendation there or motion?
I can make the motion to allow the increase in height of the sign on Garden Street to 20 feet, to a maximum of 20 feet.
Okay.
I will second.
All right. Have a motion and a second. And And that is, everybody understands that's just for one, well, we already get to one sign, but this sign could be 20 feet in height. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. May we have a roll call, please?
Member Johnson?
Yes?
Member Smith Rodriguez?
Yes.
Alternate Member Kilpatrick?
Yes.
Chairman Taylor?
Yes.
Vice Chairman Shahayed?
Yes.
Okay. All right. So we have one sign at 20 feet. All right. All right. And now I gotta find the agenda again. Was that page 3 or 2? What was that? No, that's the other one. That did back up. Okay. All right, we have no other business, so we'll open it up. Does anyone in the public wish to make any petitions or requests before the board? All right, see none. No? Okay. Staff, you have anything to report to us?
No, sir. You would do, actually, I do want to tell you that your next meeting, you have 2 cases. So we will need you a quorum at your June meeting.
Oh, so, you got 2 on the books right now. Okay. All right. Counselor, anything to report? Well, as far as the chair, we still have 2 vacancies. We could really use another alternative in case one of us wants to take a vacation next month. No vacations. No vacations.
You have a captive audience.
Oh, yeah. We have openings on this board. Now, one is very specific. You have to be a certain field, which, please don't read it all over again. It's too long. The second one can be just anybody. So if you have a hankering to want to sit up here once a month or once every 3 months and listen to reports.
That anybody position is an alternate member, so you're not required to participate at every regular meeting like the regular member position requires.
We are required to have 5. Well, we're supposed to have 5. We can have a minimum of 4. But when you only have 7 people and we only have 5 right now, nobody can take a vacation. We all have to be here. So, so we could use an extra. Any reports? Anything from there? Nothing. All right. And that being the case, then I will call this meeting adjourned.